All right, we are here to talk again about cameos for Shang Tsung. And this time, we're talking about Darrius. Darrius. He is essentially a mix-up cameo that provides a lot, a lot of options. This guy has more moves than probably any other cameo. Look at all this. There's a lot. So, we're going to go over each of them. We're going to talk about how they fit into Shang Tsung's game plan and what they can offer him to enhance his strengths, cover his weaknesses, and get some kind of extra utility out of the cameo. So, the first thing to know about Darrius is that he has really slow cooldowns. His best move is his tornado kick. As you can see, that ate the whole cameo bar, and it takes this long to recharge. It takes forever and ever and ever and ever. Once you do this, even though Shang Tsung has incredibly long combos, when you do this move, you are committed to not having Darrius around for a long time, and you're especially committed to not being able to use the tornado kick for a really long time. Usually, the result of using the tornado kick is that you don't get to use Darrius again in the round. So, be very careful when choosing this. However, Tornado Kick does have a bunch of follow-ups. You could do this. You can just do this. And you can do this. And you can do this. So, you do get a lot out of Tornado Kick. It's not just as simple as, oh, it's his ambush move, it stuns people for a long time, and then it's gone. It's a little more complicated than that, and we'll go over the details. But we are going to start with his simplest move, in my opinion, which is Twister Kicks. This is his back cameo. That is what it does. 120 damage, 3 hits, makes kind of okay spacing, pushes your opponent back a little bit, close to full screen. Yeah, not quite, but a little further than round start distance. And it takes half of his cameo bar, and like all of Darrius's moves, it has at best an average-ish recharge. This is pretty close to a normal recharge rate for most cameos, but it is not amazing. So, its main application is its use on block. Do something like that. We did a lot of chip damage, we're -7. However, if our opponent flawless blocks this, which they would usually only do if they understood Darrius pretty well, we're at -17. So if your opponent is able to flawless block this move, and there is a flawless block gap in between each of those hits that will enable you to do it pretty widely, then you're not going to end up safe on block. And we're going to go ahead and see if this move can be reversaled. So we're going to go into Darrius. Yep, as you can see, that worked. You can get jabbed out of it. So this move is pretty weak. Sometimes you're going to use Twister Kicks out of Tornado Kick, which is this into Twister Kicks. But it is not often a great choice. Right there, you can do this, kind of get some extra chip damage. Sometimes if your opponent's really low on health, it's a decent option. And they probably didn't see it coming. And it doesn't do incredible damage. If your opponent ends up getting hit by it, we'll say, you know, they're going to take 130 damage at best. It's, yeah, or 12%, something like that. It's okay. And the truth is, if for getting caught with one hit, it's pretty good. But this is a pretty questionable move, even to try to fire on block. Although it is safe on block if you think your opponent doesn't know that they can jab out of it or flawless block it. So, narrow uses, but uses. It does have good reach. That's one nice thing about it, is that, you know, you can start over here and smack your opponent from right there, and this is a spacing that Shang Tsung normally has problems at. Normally, our only real option is this forward 3 as old Shang. Now we have an option, no matter what we're doing. We can transform during the move, just like we can with all of our moves. So, we can get something off of this that Shang Tsung doesn't normally have access to. And he does advance while he's doing it, so even if you're way back here, you'll move up and smack him with Darrius and create this whirlwind that they can't get in. So, it's not completely useless, but I think we should concede we're not going to use this move very much. The next move, in order of usefulness, I think, is Darrius' heel turn. Now, heel turn is a good move. Heel turn is right here. As you can see, it says it can only be used when opponent is being knocked down. Basically, as long as your opponent is in the animation of being knocked down, this move is available, even if they aren't actually on the ground yet. So if they're being juggled in the air, you can activate heel turn. However, if they're going to end up on the ground, but they haven't actually come off of the ground yet and ended up in the air, heel turn will not fire until their feet leave the floor. And you can delay heel turn pretty much as long as you want. We'll give an example here. You can delay it like that, come all the way to there, and if you delay it long enough, he will just run off. Him running off is not very good. Canceling it does not really give you anything. The only reason you're going to do it is if you already hit with something else and you don't want heel turn to interrupt your combo. So most of the time, if you time things right, you don't ever need to delay heel turn, because you're just going to call it out at the right moment because it's an ambush. However, it does not cost anything to delay. As you can see, he is not consuming any Kameo meter while he delays. So you can time it however you want after you've knocked your opponent down. But because it's an ambush, delay just doesn't come up very often. Sometimes you might be able to juke your opponent with it. Now, things that heel turn is great for are mix-ups. If you're old Shang, you can do this. Overhead low. And because you can delay it, there's no way for them to actually know what the right timing is. So you do something a little bit similar to Lao Hat. And the truth is that if you are timing it correctly, you can actually hit with both the overhead and the low and get a full combo. So, something like that. Your combo has to be a little different than your normal B&B. You have to go into your knee a little bit earlier than you normally would, instead of going into your standing 4. You gotta go into your forward 4. Either way, it's possible. And of course, if you don't want to do the overhead, you don't have to, so you could call it in, just do the low, wait for Darrius to run off, try to juke your opponent. You could also call it in, and the real reason that delaying it is good is that you could call it in, go for a throw. Darrius will wait for you to do it. Although, truthfully, most of the time, you can actually go for a throw, catch him with the throw, and then the overhead connects, so that you can basically make this an unblockable. So you have a little bit of a setup here. As you can see, we got 2 hits for 70 damage. And you have to time Darrius a little bit more precisely than I am, but there, we got the throw, then it hit with the kick. And we did an unblockable 70. If they try to block, they get caught with the throw. If they try to crouch, they get hit with the overhead. Either way, we're dealing damage. And the overhead by itself does 60 damage, so we're doing very close to the same amount of damage, whether I connect with the throw or not. So this can put your opponent in some checkmate scenarios, and it's great for that. It also happens to be that Darrius will show up behind your opponent no matter where your opponent is. So even if your opponent's over here, as you can see, we just got overhead into the skull, which means that we can combo from the overhead from full screen. And this is something that's a little more unique to Shang. we can do that. So, off of an overhead from full screen, we just got 23%. And if you just have the one skull hit, or if it hits at an awkward timing, sometimes heel turn can smack your opponent onto the ground quicker than we'd like it to. But we'll still get like 90 damage if it hits at an awkward timing. So, it's very good. And giving yourself an overhead from full screen is something that enhances Shang zoning that we don't normally have access to. Normally this is kind of a Quan Chi special. Now it's something Shang can do too. So, other weird things about this move, in addition to giving a vortex, you can use it to make plus frames. So, if your opponent's going to block and you know it, you can do something like this and delay it so that you can create a block string, much like you would with something like Lao Hat. Like that. So now we're plus 167, it says, after using our claw at the end of our string, and then we just go into more pressure. So it is fantastic at making block strings after you've hit. So on Oki, you can go into a good full block string. It also lets you do a mix-up off of EX injection. So another Shang special here. Like that. You can turn into your opponent, have them restand jailed for almost 50 frames off of EX injection like you normally do, turned into them, and now Darrius is coming in with the overhead, and of course every character has a sweep, so if you don't know what low your opponent does, you always have a sweep, even if they don't have a combo starter. And you just get free vortex right there. And you're doing it as the damage boosted version of your opponent, so it's going to be an extra high damage 50-50. And because the delay costs no meter, if your opponent does have some kind of low starter, you're going to have ready access to that no matter how long that starter takes. Now, the next move on the list for Darrius here is Volley Ballistic, which is normally his forward Kameo. And this is how it works. Overhead, overhead. Now you can see what happened is he knocked the opponent over, and then he did an overhead from behind him after the opponent woke up. Now if our opponent does a good delayed wake up, here's what happens. Darrius whiffs. But, much like Eat Dirt, which looks the same but is not the same, Eat Dirt smacks your opponent onto the ground. It's a splat, whereas the heel turn is a splat, and the Eat Dirt is a bounce. So, when your opponent gets hit with heel turn, here's what happens. They bounce into the air, full combo. So, we would do stuff like this. They go up. Or we go like this into a low overhead scenario. And we get a full combo off of Eat Dirt. Where heel turn, we can get a full combo, but we have to play it very precisely. With Eat Dirt, it is a very clean bounce, and we can do whatever we want after it. Now, Eat Dirt can also be delayed, just like heel turn can be delayed. So, we can go like this, and if he delayed, we still hit him. And of course, we can delay to make any kind of move that we want to fit into that mix-up, fit into the mix-up. Now right there, he beat both of our moves with that, but we're going to delay. And one of the unique things about both heel turn and Eat Dirt is that you can use these moves to beat armor. So we're going to make him do his armored move on wake up. Beat armor, full combo. And the same is true if we're going to fire our heel turn and go out here. You go over there. This is a little less consistent, but against somebody like Sub-Zero is a good example. He has a full screen armored move right there. Now that would have been break armor into full combo. So against somebody like Sub-Zero who has a full screen armored wake up where they try to slide you, this is fantastic. You just say, nope, from full screen you can't armor me, from up close you can't armor me. Here we go. Full combo. And you can do it with the overhead or the low firing first, whichever you prefer, because of the ability to delay on both what Shang does and what Darrius does. So, the other thing to know about Eat Dirt after Volley Ballistic is a hard move to implement into your combo, but Eat Dirt is very, very easy. If your opponent is doing something like this, and you know they're going to block, you're worried they're going to block, you don't want to challenge. Same way as you use heel turn, you can go into a big block string. You can go hold the delay. Start again. After your block string, you can release Eat Dirt and go into it. And if they get hit by Eat Dirt, you get a full combo. And if they block Eat Dirt, you have tons of plus frames. So you can use it to make block strings. And that one you don't actually have to do it on Oki. You could do it on block. However, Volley Ballistic is the only way to get into Eat Dirt. So when you do Volley Ballistic, this move is 47 frames of startup. It is a tough sell. You can see it's only -3 on block, so if they block it, you have the mix, because they can't hit Darrius from behind them. So if they tried to punish you after blocking Volley Ballistic, they're going to get hit by Eat Dirt. And then that's going to mean a full combo. So if you did something like this, you had an overhead in there, and then you have a plus on block situation afterwards because of Eat Dirt. And a mix-up because you can decide between the low and the high, or the low and the overhead rather, and which one's going to hit first. But your opponent can jab out of this, as is probably not surprising by looking at the move. So we go, yep, jabbed right out, full combo. So if they know that you're going to do Darrius, they have answers. So you're going to want to mix up the timing on Darrius if you want to use this overhead as a mix-up and try to integrate it into block strings. You're kind of forcing it, and it takes a really long time, so they're almost never going to get hit by the initial attack from Volley Ballistic. But if you can find the right spacing, you can also just make it bad to try and punish. Now you can see the first hit whiffed there, so if they use certain moves, it'll just end up being too slow to connect. And another thing to know is that when Eat Dirt connects after Volley Ballistic, it leads to a bounce long enough not only to get a combo that everybody loves, but to do Form Stealer. And you can see that even if we wait for it to hit, we can get our Form Stealer like that. Very easily. This is not a hard Form Stealer route at all. And you can get a pretty good combo with your opponent after the Form Stealer. You can kind of do whatever you want that you would normally do when your opponent's been hit with their first airborne move of the combo. So, if you're looking for Form Stealer, and you're looking for mix-ups as your opponent, Darrius just gives them to you. Volley Ballistic is a great move, especially when you use it out of Tornado Kick, because Volley Ballistic is one of the moves you can use out of Tornado Kick. Tornado Kick guarantees that that overhead connects, and then you get Eat Dirt at the end to follow up. So, Your Oki game is really, really strong with this. And if your opponent is respecting you too much and isn't trying to jab out of gaps, then they're gonna block the overhead from Darrius and then have to eat them. They're gonna have to hold the mix from Eat Dirt, and you can make it a 50-50. So they kind of just have to guess. And they're guessing for a lot of damage because Shang Tsung deals a lot of damage. Volley Ballistic also has okay reach. It hits just a little closer than that. It's not incredible reach, but it is okay. You'll also notice that if Volley Ballistic doesn't connect, Eat Dirt doesn't happen. So when you throw this out there, you better be sure that it actually is going to connect, at least on block, with your opponent. Or you're not going to get Eat Dirt, which is the real attraction to firing Volley Ballistic, is that you get to use Eat Dirt afterward. So that's the essentials of how Volley Ballistic works. It has some similar applications to Heel Turn, but is much more of a thing you might do on block. Way to try to mix your opponent up a little more actively. And of course, if you have Shang doing stuff like this, right, and hitting with lows while your opponent is trying to block him, you're going low, and this time instead you're doing an overhead into Volley Ballistic. Your opponent just might respect you too much because they're afraid of a low. Now, the final single move in Darrius's kit is Tornado Kick, and this is his neutral Kameo. As you can see, it is an ambush, and like I said before, it eats his entire Kameo gauge, and it has a slow cooldown. So, this move is a big commitment, but it has a lot of things that are good about it. Out of Tornado Kick, you can go into that uppercut right there, which I believe is called double whammy. Yeah, the double whammy. It's back Kameo after Darrius lands. You do back Kameo, and there you go. And out of the double whammy, you can do tornado kicks. Like that. Or you can do double Dagon kick, which is like this. So, we've already gone over what Tornado Kicks does, but let's go over double whammy real quick. So double whammy, we could do something like this. As you can see, double whammy is 0 on block there. And if it hits, then we can follow it up with double Dagon kick, which does a lot of damage. So if our opponent does that, we do this, we do that. That was 21% because you got hit with the kick. It's less than that if you get hit with the with just the uppercut. But it is definitely a thing. So our opponent blocks this, gets hit by that. There we go, 20% if you get hit by the uppercut into double Dagon kick. Now, if you had gotten hit by the uppercut into double whammy, or into double whammy, into twister kicks, you only took 17%. So if you think your opponent is going to block, double Dagon kick makes a lot of sense. But double Dagon kick is a high, so... And as you can see, Shang is actually armored while he goes in for the uppercut there. So, after Tornado Kick, there is no risk to trying to do a follow-up. Unless that follow-up is Volley Ballistic, which is one of his other follow-up options. Out of Tornado Kick, you can not just go into the uppercut, you can also go into Volley Ballistic right there. Now, double Dagon Kick's big downside is that it is a high. So as you can see, your opponent can just crouch it punish you there. However, if you find that Tornado Kick hits when you didn't expect it to, or if you, in fact, you find double whammy hits when you didn't expect it to, really, because if Tornado Kick hits, this is a crazy good move. As you can see, it's a mid, and if it hits, they are in stun for just a massive amount of time. You get to do whatever you want. Full combo right there. However, if Tornado Kick gets blocked, and then you go into double whammy because Tornado Kick got blocked, and you're surprised your double whammy actually hits, now it's time to go into double Dagon Kick so that you can maximize damage. And for Shang Tsung, this is fantastic because it puts your opponent full screen, and we get to start our zoning game again. But because Darrius will be on such a long cooldown, we will not get to use heal turn when this happens, like we would maybe want to. But it does give us plenty of hit advantage. 21 frames of hit advantage is fantastic. We can now meaty our ground skull. So, no reason to be upset at that outcome. 20% damage, meaty a ground skull. And because Tornado Kick is a ambush, we can use it to make block strings, especially because it's a mid. So we can go into something like this, and it will give us a ton of plus frames. And because it has follow-ups, we can do volley ballistic into eat dirt. Keep going. We've made a 50-50 there in our block string. But our opponent has to respect us a little bit. They can, in fact, interrupt our volley ballistic. They cannot interrupt if we instead did something like this. They would not be able to interrupt that and would get punished for trying. And if we did that, they could punish us by crouching, but they have to know that double Dagon Kick is a high. And if they get hit on accident, they're going to take a lot of damage. Or we can go into our Twister Kicks. Like that. Do a lot of chip damage, get good spacing. Those are all mids. But our opponent could, in theory, flawless block to try to make it punishable. But right here, we basically reset the neutral with the amount of distance we've created. So he can be used to make decent block strings using Tornado Kick. Unfortunately, this costs the full Kameo meter, so you don't usually want to do this unless you really think that it locks up a round for you. Or you think that that volley ballistic setup is very valuable. Another thing to know is that all of these things combo on hit with Tornado Kick. So the timing is a little odd on the Tornado Kicks. There it is. That's all a true combo on hit. And that's a true combo on hit. And volley ballistic is also a true combo on hit into eat dirt still, for when your opponent stands back up. So if you are going to get the hit and you want to set up volley ballistics, eat dirt, then you might actually just want to do Tornado Kick on hit, just so that you can get access to the eat dirt and guarantee that it's happening. And you can still complete your combo. You'll do a little extra damage from what Shang normally does. And then you'll come here, get another combo. And of course you had a 50-50 there. And you had block string possibilities because Eat Dirt can make you plus. So you have an incredible Loki situation if you're willing to use Tornado Kick into Volley Ballistic. And of course, you could just do your regular combo into heel turn if you wanted as well to try to get a similar Oki situation. Tornado Kick also lets you do EX injection combos where you steal your opponent's form. They are a little bit tricky to time because you need to hit the Kameo the very moment after you hit the form steal button. There you go. That was an example of an EX form stealer combo using Darrius. And it is even better than that because you can actually do the form steal into the volley ballistic and set up crazy Oki situations as your opponent's character. So you don't have to worry about your opponent knowing how to play themselves better than you. I mistimed it a little bit there, but it is possible to hit them with the volley ballistic and set up Eat Dirt. Yeah, thanks, game. Finally get it right. The options here are pretty much limitless. You'll end up as your opponent with the Form Stealer buff, and you will have this fantastic vortex situation. Just like that. Now do whatever you want as your opponent. And like I said, you just get 50-50s. And if you sweep and connect the Eat Dirt fast enough with each other, they will combo. So your sweep will connect, and then the overhead from Eat Dirt will connect right away and put them into a full bounce. So you can get full combos off of a sweep if you don't know what kind of low to use from your opponent's character. Everybody can sweep into a combo with that. You just need to learn the timings. So, Tornado Kick is a very, very powerful move. It does everything. It also just raw can be used to make Form Stealer combos like that. So anytime you hit, you could use Twister Kick to make a Form Stealer combo, very similar way to what you would do with people being frozen by Sub-Zero Kameo or Frost Kameo. So these moves make for a crazy mix-up game, an Oki game, and Form Stealer game from Shang that he doesn't normally have access to. This leads me in to my overall thoughts about Darrius. Like I said, I think he gives you an incredible mix-up game, and he does this for everybody. And this is one of the cool things about him when you use him with Shang, is that if you want to lean into a Form Stealer style of play with Shang, you can very easily use Darrius to make all of your opponents have mix-ups that your opponents don't even know. You might actually be able to play a better game as your opponent than your opponent can, because they don't understand what's happening with the Darrius mix-ups, and they're guessing wrong on the Darrius 50-50s. So, most characters don't have access to these at all because most people don't play Darrius. So, you're going to have access to 50-50s that your opponent doesn't have access to with their character, and you have a damage buff. Now you're playing a version of your opponent's character that might actually be better than their version of the character. Because a damage buff plus 50-50s means that if you already did one combo to get into the Form Stealer, and now you hit them for another combo after you've stolen their form, they're probably dead. So, or at least close enough to dead that your zoning can do the rest of the work. It's also worth knowing that Darrius gives you extra health. You end up with 1,050 health if you are Shang Tsung using Darrius. So, you have a little extra wiggle room to attempt these 50-50s and maybe fail a little bit. You have a ton of Form Steal options. You have really good block strings, although they are limited in use because Tornado Kick has such a slow cooldown. But when you do use them, you end up with overheads, you end up with high damage if they get caught by an armored move in there, you end up with plus on block scenarios that are fantastic. You can also just do a very traditional block string with Tornado Kick if you are worried about your opponent calling out the... Do that. Do something a little bit like that. Obviously not exactly that, because that's super punishable, but do something like that. There you go. You've come up with a safe block string. So you have a lot of options for your block string, even though you have a limited amount of uses for it. This is something that is normally weak on Shang. He's normally very bad at making block strings and usually gives up his turn when he has to play by himself or with the wrong cameos. But he can make it work with Darrius, although it's not the best thing for his block strings. An interesting thing about a lot of Darrius's moves is that because you're going to hit with Shang and Darrius at the same time on all of his heel turn and eat dirt setups, it's very easy to break armor on Wake Up very consistently with Darrius, which means you have a lot less stuff to be afraid of. When your opponent is on the ground, you are no longer in this position where you might be afraid of armor. You are not afraid of anything now. Whatever your opponent tries, they just have to hold the pressure you're giving them, even if they have the meter. He also has a good answer to projectile immunity, although it is limited. His heel turn, once you've knocked somebody down full screen with your injection, as you do at the end of your combos, or when you've hit somebody with a ground skull and didn't have the meter to combo them or something, you can now call heel turn, and if they try projectile immunity, they'll get stepped on by Darrius. And he is not a projectile, and will break the projectile immunity. So you have an answer, but it is limited because they have to be knocked down in order for heel turn to be activated. You can't just use it in the raw. So it doesn't just universally break projectile immunity, but if you think that's what they're going to do on Wake Up, you can stop it. But you also have the fact that you are much better up close now to kind of shore up this projectile immunity issue. You might be able to actually formulate a game plan where you don't have to zone. An overhead from full screen is also pretty cool, and the fact that you can combo from it is just icing on the cake. If you want to play a version of Shang that mixes up your opponent, often as your opponent, you want to use Form Stealer, and then lean into mix-ups and 50-50s, Darrius is the answer. He does it. Unfortunately, his slow cooldowns really hold him back. If his cooldowns were even just a little bit faster than they are, he would be much better. Because one of the best things that a cameo can be is available, and Darrius is not super available. So the key to playing him is going to be understanding when it is a good time to fire his setups and when you should save the meter and not fire his setups because you're going to need it later, or you want to be ready to use a tornado kick or something like that. There are also a few matchups where when you steal a certain person's form, Darrius is particularly good for it. A good example is Raiko. If you steal Raiko's form as Shang and you have Darrius, you now have access to full combos from his command grab. And Darrius is reasonably good at making grab combos just full stop because of the way he fires. We did something like this. He's not great at it with Shang, as you can see. Might not even be possible with Shang. Yeah, it doesn't look possible with Shang, but he is reasonably good at doing it in general, and because his tornado kick causes people to be stunned for such a long time, you will almost always get a real combo off of it if Darrius's kick lands during your throw. And like I said, being able to make some checkmate scenarios in the corner where we have unblockable throw into heel turn or eat dirt, and then you also can't armor out of it because the throw will connect and then the overhead will connect and break the armor. So you can put your opponent into some checkmates, unblockables that are normally not possible. And if you did that same throw technique with Eat Dirt instead of Heel Turn, you might be able to get a full combo off of it. So, we did this. I'm sure there's a timing for this. There it is. Yeah, you maybe can't quite get a full combo off of that, but it is an unblockable setup. And I think that's the long and short of it, is if Darrius was more available, we'd be very keen on him. As it stands, I think you can definitely make him work, and but I think if you're going to do it, you should really lean into playing things your opponents don't expect. Turn into them, do sweep 50-50s that lead to full combos, sweeper overhead, and do just crazy mix-ups that your opponent hasn't dreamed of, because Darrius is giving you access to a ton of them. Zone them with 50-50s. If you turn into Liu Kang, you have a low projectile and you have heel turn as an overhead. So do it. Zone them with 50-50s. It all seems very, very powerful. It's just the limited number of times that you can use it that hold it back. So, those are my thoughts on Darrius, and that's the video. If you enjoyed it, give me a like, a comment, a subscribe, and a pound of flesh. I'll see you in the next one.